Princess Veyra of the Dralthi Ascendancy had never seen a human up close until the day she watched one die. She stood on the observation deck of the flagship Indomitable, her silver-scaled hands clasped behind her back, watching the battle unfold through the armored viewport. The human fleet was being annihilated. Their ships were primitive, metal boxes with guns bolted on, no shielding worthy of the name, maneuvering thrusters that belonged in a museum. One by one, they detonated against the Dralthi battle line, their crews spilling into the void like insects from a crushed nest. "Pathetic," murmured her uncle, General Vrax, standing at her side. "They fight with the desperation of prey animals. No strategy, no grace, no honor." Veyra inclined her head in agreement. The Dralthi had conquered a dozen worlds with their superior technology and warrior culture. Humans were merely the latest obstacle, a minor species that had somehow stumbled into claiming planets the Ascendancy wanted. They would be crushed, and their worlds would be harvested. "Reports indicate their ground forces are even less impressive," Vrax continued, a sneer in his voice. "Soft bodies. Primitive projectile weapons. They'll break the moment we land." "When do we land?" Veyra asked. "Tomorrow. You'll observe from a forward position. The Council wants you to see how real warriors conduct themselves before you assume your ceremonial duties." Veyra nodded, though something flickered in her chest, a feeling she couldn't name. She was 23, barely an adult by Dralthi standards, and had never seen true combat. Her role was political, smiling at diplomats, attending ceremonies, wearing the elaborate gowns that signified her station. Her uncle never missed an opportunity to remind her that she was soft, that she'd never proven herself. Tomorrow, she thought, would change that. The landing zone was chaos. Veyra stood behind a defensive barrier on a ridge overlooking a human settlement, surrounded by a dozen elite Dralthi warriors. Below, the invasion was unfolding exactly as predicted. Human soldiers in drab uniforms scattered before the Dralthi advance, their bullets pinging uselessly off energy shields. Tanks burned. Buildings collapsed. The humans fell back, then fell back again, always retreating. "They run," Vrax observed with satisfaction. "Like all weak things do." But Veyra noticed something. The humans weren't running randomly. They were pulling back in organized waves, covering each other, carrying their wounded. Even in defeat, there was a rhythm to their retreat, a purpose. Then the ambush struck. The ground beneath the Dralthi advance party erupted. Plasma mines, crude but effective, tore through the front lines, sending warriors flying. From the ruins of a collapsed building, human soldiers emerged not running, but charging. They fired from behind cover, used smoke to obscure vision, moved in pairs that covered each other's blind spots. For a moment, the Dralthi advance stalled. "Reinforcements," Vrax snarled into his communicator. "Now." But the humans had anticipated that too. A second wave of explosives cut off the path behind them. The Dralthi vanguard was isolated, pinned down by a species they dismissed as prey. Then the real nightmare began. A human soldier, just one, came over the ridge. He was huge by human standards, his face smeared with mud and blood, his eyes holding a fire that Veyra had never seen in any warrior. He carried a weapon unlike the others, some kind of modified anti-armor rifle, its barrel still glowing from repeated use. He moved like he knew exactly where every Dralthi soldier was positioned, like he'd been fighting them his entire life. Vrax raised his sidearm. "Kill that one. Now." 3 warriors advanced. The human dropped 2 with shots that found the gaps in their shields, the tiny weaknesses Veyra had been taught didn't exist in combat. The third closed to melee range, his energy blade humming. The human met him with a combat knife, taking a deep cut across his arm to drive the blade into the warrior's throat. Then he looked up and saw Veyra. Their eyes met across 50 meters of burning battlefield. In that moment, Veyra saw something that would haunt her forever. Not hatred, not fear. Something else entirely. Recognition. As if he saw past her armor, past her scales, past her title, and saw only another living thing caught in a machine neither of them had built. Then the counter-ambush came. A Dralthi gunship, responding to Vrax's call, swept over the ridge. Its plasma cannons opened fire, strafing the human position. Veyra watched the soldier dive behind a chunk of debris, watched the debris explode, watched him go down. Finally, Vrax muttered. But he wasn't dead. Somehow, impossibly, the human was dragging himself toward them. His leg was clearly broken, maybe his arm too. Blood painted a trail behind him. But he kept coming, dragging his rifle, his jaw set in an expression of pure determination. Finish him, Vrax ordered. A warrior stepped forward, raising his weapon for the killing shot. That's when Veyra saw it. A Dralthi separatist, one of the rebels who'd been causing trouble on the frontier, had infiltrated their position. He'd been hiding among the reinforcements, waiting for his moment. And his moment was now. He lunged from behind a supply crate, a plasma dagger in his hand, heading straight for Vrax. For her uncle. For the highest value target on the field. Vrax turned, too slow. The blade was inches from his throat. And then the human soldier, the broken, dying human soldier, was there. He'd covered the last 10 meters on sheer will alone. He threw himself between the assassin and the general, taking the plasma blade directly in his chest. His roar of pain was the loudest sound Veyra had ever heard. And even as he fell, even as his blood sprayed across her uniform, he used his last strength to grab the assassin's arm and hold it long enough for Vrax's guards to react. They cut the separatist down in seconds. But the human was already gone, his eyes staring at nothing, his hand still wrapped around the wrist of his killer. Silence fell over the battlefield. Vrax stared at the human body at his feet. His face was unreadable. "Why?" he whispered. "Why would one of them for me?" Veyra couldn't answer. She couldn't speak at all. She was still frozen in that moment when the human's eyes had met hers, not with hatred, not with fear, but with something she still couldn't name. The ending. They brought the human's body back to the Dralthi flagship. Protocol demanded it be scanned for tracking devices, studied for biological weaknesses, then disposed of. But Veyra intervened. "No," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "Prepare it for return to their people. With honors." Vrax stared at her. He was the enemy. He was a warrior. Veyra met her uncle's gaze, without flinching. "He saved your life. He saved the life of a Dralthi general, knowing exactly who we were, knowing we were here to conquer his world. He did it anyway. That is not weakness. That is something I do not have a word for in our language." Vrax was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. 3 days later, a human delegation arrived under flag of truce to recover their dead. They were wary, suspicious, expecting a trap. Instead, they found the soldier's body prepared with reverence usually reserved for Dralthi heroes. And they found Princess Veyra waiting. She approached the human leader, a grizzled woman with tired eyes and a firm jaw, and spoke words she'd rehearsed 100 times. "Your soldier died protecting my uncle, protecting the general of an army that came to destroy his people. I do not understand why he did this. But I know that I was wrong about humans. I thought you were weak because your bodies are soft and your technology is simple. I see now that strength is not in scales or shields." She paused, her golden eyes meeting the woman's brown ones. Strength is in this. She touched her chest over her heart. In choosing to protect, even those who would destroy you, I will not forget what I learned here. The human woman studied her for a long moment. Then she said, his name was Sergeantcole. He had a wife and a daughter back home. He used to say that being a soldier wasn't about killing the enemy. It was about making sure the people behind you didn't have to. Veyra absorbed this silently. Then she removed a small token from her own armor, a clan sigil that had belonged to her mother. She placed it on Marcus Cole's chest. Then Sergeant Marcus Cole taught me what it means to be a warrior, she said. I will carry that lesson all my days. The human delegation left with their fallen. And though the war continued for another 2 years, something had shifted. Dralthi tactics changed, fewer civilian targets, more attempts at negotiation. Prisoner exchanges happened. Surrender became an option where it never had been before. Years later, when Veyra finally ascended to the throne as Queen of the Dralthi Ascendancy, her first official act was to sign a peace treaty with the human worlds. In the ceremony, she wore 2 symbols on her armor, the ancient Dralthi crest of her ancestors and a small, simple patch bearing the name Cole. A human journalist asked her why. Veyra looked directly into the camera, her golden eyes bright with unshed tears. Because the strongest being I ever met was a human man who died protecting his enemy, she said. And I want every soldier on every world to remember that strength is not in how many you kill. It's in how many you save. Sergeant Marcus Cole saved my uncle. He saved me from a lifetime of ignorance. And in doing so, he saved us all. She touched the patch gently. I never knew his name until after he died, but I will carry it until I do.